Oh, we lost you, Tara.
Hello, everybody. And yes, as we went live, we did lose one of our panel members, Shatara McKay, with Women of Color in Mental Health. But hopefully we'll have her back on in a moment, and I think that might be her. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us for panel 2 of our one-day 9-panel event, focusing on PTSD, anxiety, inclusion. It's a big thing. I will forget it myself, right? Inclusion and self-care, discussing mental health, race, culture, and identity with and through our fandom influences. And thank you everybody for being on today. We do have some feedback, so someone just check your mics a little bit, just if you don't mind. And today's panel is called, Yami, help me, I lost it. Let's see, where did we go? Thank you so much for my backstage fantastic crew. So today's panel is called On Fandom Influences. We lost it again. I know it's hard when we have so many people on, so just leave it for a moment, and when we're ready, we'll pull it back off. Fandom Influences, understanding trauma, stress, response, and recovery. That is a huge, huge burden of discussion, and everyone here has a perspective specific to a lived experience that I think is almost dichotomous in a way, even and parallel in terms of us being able to learn from each other, because we've all gone through a trauma experience, lived experience in life, and we've learned how to recover it from it and through different means and coping strategies. So today we're going to focus on the coping and the healing strategies and hear everyone's story, and then specifically learn how they were able to work their way through their experiences and how they're helping others do that. So thank you everyone for being with us today. And I'm going to do my best to make sure I get everyone heard. So normally, just a real quick shout out to everybody. Just give us your name and what organization you're with. We'll start with Mackenzie. Oh, you're muted, my love.
Hello, everybody. Take 2. My name is Mackenzie Floor. I am the screenwriter and author of The Right of Wands, which is a young adult fantasy. And I have personally dealt with PTSD and ABPD, which I still suffer from.
Absolutely. And Mr. Jackson?
Hi, yes, I'm Jay Jackson. I'm an Army veteran. I am the host of the podcast, The Sacred Now. I am currently working through my own issues with PTSD and anxiety. We'll get into that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Dustin?
My name is Dustin Burnell. I'm the writer, creator of the Listener series. And I guess I use it to inform people about things.
That's a very good statement and very vague, but we'll get into it. I give him such a hard time, people. Just don't mind me. And the lovely, my very good buddy friend here, Miss Margie Finks, with Transfer During Adoption.
I'm Margie Fink. I'm a foster and adoptive mom. I'm the co-founder of Transfiguring Adoption. We do a lot using media and fandom to help kids process trauma, connect with their caregivers, all in a non-judgmental, non-threatening way by being able to work with characters.
Woohoo! And pop media. We're going to talk about that. And then Miss Shatara? Oh, boy. That poor thing. I hope she can make it on. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Wood. Let me see. I have a very deep story, but bottom line, I'm in the entertainment industry as an artist with Warner Brothers and DC Comics again.
And
I've never really had any issues with PTSD or anything like that. But I'm very, very familiar with it.
I know.
I'm sorry, Nisha.
No, I was going to say your lived and shared experiences. Yep.
Yeah. Well, do you want to hear how I got started or anything like that?
Not yet. We were just introing, and then we're going to go into our questions. So you just hang tough, okay? We're getting there, okay? And then just Mr. Ian Wagner, and then Sharon, real quick.
Ian Wagner, clinical mental health counselor here in Pennsylvania. Work with LGBT relations as well as trauma. I also have my own experience in PTSD and avoidance, which we'll get into later.
And then Sharon.
Hi, my name is Sharon Blady. I am the CEO and founder of Speak Up Mental Health, and as someone with PTSD related to both childhood abuse and domestic violence, I use my lived experience to help others, and I use fandoms to do it. So I have an Embrace Your Superpowers and Bulletproof to Stigma program grounded in comic books and K-pop.
Thank you so much. This is a huge, wonderful panel of guests, and what we're going to be doing today is, because I do kind of have everyone's background, I really want to be able to focus on what's called survivorship. And there's a myriad of ways that we deal with survivorship. There is the lived experience of personal physical, emotional, and mental trauma. There's the lived experience of being in a community that has been traumatized. There's a lived experience of working in an environment that's quite traumatic, unfortunately, and abusive, to be honest, and can shape us in directions that can make us or break us, unfortunately. And then there's lived experience of living in a home and an environment with people who, unfortunately, affect our mental, physical, and emotional health. So there's a huge largesse to it, right? In terms of what trauma and survivorship is. So and of course we have the grace of having three military lovelies on with us today who have different experiences. One working in mental health, one physically having the experience of the spectrum of trauma, and then of course Kevin's experience and just being in the military, but growing up in a very amazing neighborhood. So I'm going to ask you specific questions to each one of you, and we'll just focus on those questions if that's okay. I'm really hoping Shatara can make it back on. I am so sorry. So Jay, we haven't really had a great amount of time to speak with you, but you are an advocate for awareness in trauma recovery for in PTSD and anxiety in the military population. And
Yes.
then you've developed a few forms of coping strategies. Can you just give us a little synopsis? I'm sorry. I promise I'll give you lots more time though.
No, that's all right. Yes, I am for the Army. I am what's called a trained assist interventionist. Assist is an acronym that stands for Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. What we do is we kind of meet people who when they're experiencing PTSD, I mean, which happens in phases, right? They tend to be in that rescue phase early on where it's after the initial shock and witnessing or experiencing the trauma or the stress, but before we actually get into like being able to recover. And so we kind of meet them in this rescue phase where they may be considering things like self-harm. And those sorts of things. So the Army has adopted this assist program or this assist training in order to help other soldiers identify where our comrades and other people may be experiencing that and where they may need the most help in that moment. It's not designed for long-term care, but it's designed to make sure that people are in that moment safe and able to identify where they are and get them to a safe place, get them to a care provider so they can start an actual care plan. So I've worked with that. There's also something the Army utilizes that we call the Master Resiliency Training.
Yes.
Which you're familiar with, which goes into a more deep dive on actual coping mechanisms for people who are experiencing not just PTSD, but other sorts of stress, normal stress, depression, anxiety, those sorts of things that that military members face in a very unique sort of way because of who we are in our culture. And so that's been primarily my work with that.
Did you get an opportunity to develop a strategy tool or something that you actually work directly with your patients and clients with?
Yes, quite frequently, and it tends to be, or at least this component of coping, of developing these skills tends to be in the moment, right? like, again, people who are experiencing or about to experience, these are folks who may be like on the edge. They're knocking on that door. And so yes, actually several times I've done interventions for people who have been like, hey, Staff Sergeant Jackson, I'm not in a good place right now, I need some help. Or
Gotcha.
I'm feeling overwhelmed, I need to know where I need to know who to talk to so that I can get through things. And a lot of these, in my experience, a lot of this is being able to help soldiers get to, and I say soldiers specifically, but across the branches, help people get to the resources that they need, because they just don't know where to go. And so that's been primarily my work with that.
That's it's not just incredible, that's phenomenal. And I really want to be able to dive into the resiliency model at later date, because I actually adopted the resiliency model, as Sharon and Elon will tell you, as part of who we are as an organization, because we're far reaching in terms of trauma and stress recovery. So I know we can talk about that in a little bit towards the end. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
And Dustin, where does this fit in your story? Does it not work? Like, the blending is incredible?
It's phenomenal. The panel is incredible. I think it's really awesome being able to bring together groups of people, like you mentioned, that have these little nuances that tie us all together.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think that we use PTSD in a way that reflects on it. It's like the first nuance we use of it is when our character Addie walks toward a flame. It's a bonfire, and he walks toward it, and it takes him back to his grandfather's burial. And in that faith, in that group of people, they would bury the owner of the home. They would burn the whole home to the ground with the individual in it, along with all their belongings. And we bring that. We use PTSD to bring that to light. We use it to serve as a character building tool, as well as give people information on PTSD and how hard it is on people.
You created the character Addie because your uncle had gone through an experience in the military when there wasn't something called resiliency training. There was nothing.
Absolutely. I watched a great man wither away because he didn't have the steps that we have now, which are so incredible in the military. At one point in time, it was like people were scared of the VA, or they didn't get to work with the VA. And it's phenomenal. And I'm super happy to be a part of a panel with people that are working so hard to change that.
Yeah. And I was thinking, as we move together, you take the dichotomy of the two parallel paths, and then we can create this beautiful tool. It's a call and an answer. Does that, what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I think in mental health, that's what we're all about. I want to learn more about your uncle's story and how you're representing it in the listener. I want to ask Shatara, if you don't mind. Well, we have her on. Ugh. Okay. So, working in mental health with the military population, what have you seen have been the highlight, unfortunate focuses in terms of critical need?
So unfortunately, there isn't a strong focus on mental health in the military. I feel like when it comes to mental health, I feel like the military is reactive versus proactive. There's a lot of times where people, yes, we have, you have and not downing anything. You have the 22 a day. Okay, cool. Let's do some push-ups. But are we working to interact with these sailors, Marines, soldiers, Air Force, airmen? Are we being proactive with their mental health? And a lot of times we're not, until they're on the brink of suicide, until they come to my mental health. Or then we're like, oh my gosh, let's do something about it. And that's not the way to do it. A lot of trainings, which I'm sure my fellow veterans can agree with, a lot of the trainings are so redundant. They're just like click through. Like, if you do a suicide training right now, how many of you guys click just to get it done, just so you can go on liberty? Click just so you can do things. We need to be more proactive when it comes to mental health. And we need leaders, and I'm enlisted to officer. We need more leaders to be more transparent about their experiences with mental health instead of putting this exterior of mission first, mission first, mission first. We have to understand that our people are the mission. You need us before we can go out and fight anything. So that's what I think my biggest issue with mental health in the military is that we are very reactive.
So I think we're on, you do realize that we just covered 3 ends of the spectrum, guys, right? That's brilliant. We literally have 3 people on here who are in the before, the middle, and the after. And I think, again, everyone knows I'm a crier. This just makes me so happy right now. And I want to tap in with Kevin's experience, because actually it was a very beautiful experience that I think he had, but I mean that he shared with us in our show last year. That was a highly cathartic experience. What were some of the things that you learned during your military time that were actually helped you to hone your creative arts, and they ended up being a very strong healing strategy?
Yeah. Well, I've been drawing since I was 5. I guess that's when I really discovered it. My mom was an artist, so I used to mimic her style, or at least try to anyway. And she realized I had a talent. So I had a natural talent to copy, mimic anything I see on paper. Mm-hmm. So I was really good with a pencil, colored pencils, crayons, things like that. Went into the military in 1988. I was about 17, 18 years old. And it wasn't until I got to Hawaii that I discovered airbrushing. And I've never seen it before, never seen anything like it. I didn't know what an airbrush was. So got into air. So I saw the thing. The person that was doing it didn't really want me to. They weren't really interested in showing me what it was. But I kind of photographic memory is common sense. It's an art tool. So I figured once I get back to the States, I would inquire about it, and that's what I did. And my mom bought my first airbrush gun. So that was, what was I? I was 20 years old. So ever since then, I think within 6 months, I mastered it. I'd never seen it before. And I've been doing it ever since. But the part of the military that Nisha's talking about is that what was the situation? So I had a situation in the Navy, and I was in the Navy, by the way, 6 years. And I started airbrushing while I was in the Navy. I started showing my work, and people started seeing it. So before I went into the military, I actually put in an application for Marvel Comics, and I was probably 18. 17 before the military. Anyway, 3 years later, Marvel called and said that they wanted to hire me. So me being stupid, not realizing what the hell I was doing, I decided to jump ship, and I went AWOL, and I was gone. I went back to New York City, literally left my command, everything. Went back to New York and got hired at Marvel Comics as a penciler. And I worked with them for 3 months. They had no idea I was in the Navy. They had no idea I was AWOL. I didn't know what AWOL was. I really didn't. I was totally naive back then. So I left. Like, I'm sure you guys know what that means to leave the military without permission. And, they came looking for me, and, I returned and everything. It went back. They put me in the brig, the whole 9 yards, for going AWOL, of course. And they were going to court-martial me. And, the big chicken dinner, if you know what that means. Bad conduct discharge. It's like having a felony in civilian life. Oh, wow. So they put me in the brig. I went through all this court stuff, with the JAG in the Navy. And once I got to trial for court-martial, I guess the judge had already, heard about what the whole deal was. And, and a lady judge at that, she was really cool. And she wanted to see like what this was all about. Like, you know, you're not in here for drug possession. You're not in here for fighting a weapons charge or anything like that. You're being court-martialed because you went AWOL to do what? And to them, that was like way out of the spectrum of what they normally discharge veterans for.
Mm-hmm.
So she was more interested in wanting to know what the hell was it that drove me to leave, you know, just jump ship and just leave the Navy. And I told her I'm an artist with Marvel. And back in 1989, 1990, Marvel was just what it is, a comic book. You know, we're not looking at a movie studio like it is today. Anyway, so she wanted to see the work. They wanted to see the work. The whole court. They were like, well, let's see what he does. So my JAG, the attorney, he had everything. He had the application from the acceptance letter from Marvel. He had all my portfolio, my artwork. Long story short, I'm really trying to break this down. It doesn't take up too much time. The judge saw the work and she dropped the charges, everything. And not only did she do that, she reinstated my rank as second-class petty officer, and they created a graphics department on aboard the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, and that's one of the nuclear aircraft carriers that's now decommissioned. That's the ship that I was stationed on. So they had created a graphics department for me specifically to run. So instead of kicking me out, they created a platform for me to use my talent. And I just went nuts after that, because I was a weapons guy. So I went into the Navy as a weapons technician and avionics and missiles and bombs and everything like that. So, but yeah, that's what started my career. And I did my time in the Navy, got out, and just continued. And here I am today. That's
literally such a. I remember every minute of what you're saying. That's how moving it was and how much I connected to it. And I know oftentimes you don't tap into that particular story, but that's a story of hope for people across the world in terms of being able to. My God, you know how hard it is to be, and I'm going to be honest, people of color, because of my own experience, it's very difficult to know that there's hope everywhere and that you're the thing that you love passionately, someone can recognize it, and the journey can go completely different, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the thing. In the Navy, in the military courtroom, this is real life. I still have the papers of conduct and everything. I remember that judge, she told me, she's like, I've never seen anyone so tenacious to go after their dream, to do what you did, to take a chance it could have been different people and they could have locked me up and gave me a bad conduct discharge regardless of whatever talent I had or whatever I tried to do. But she recognized it, and she literally immediately dropped everything and focused more on how can we utilize his talent here in the Navy instead of punishing. And that was it.
That's just incredible. I'm so, I'm just so grateful that you were willing to discuss that today. Everything is just so connected, how you meet people and all these pieces just fall together. Even how I met you, right? And everything just works so well. I'm going to jump in a little bit here because the two stories we have with Mackenzie and with Margie are complementary, because now we're looking at how does a child have a lived traumatic experience, but then how do they find their way through the traumatic experience? And is that are those strategies that we can use not just for children, also for the veteran population and for the physically and emotionally healing population? So real quickly with you, Mackenzie, your traumatic experience as a child living through an abusive life. Do you mind sharing that quickly for us?
Of course. So for me, I grew up in a household that was mentally abusive. My dad was very mentally abusive to my mother, and there was multiple times where I would witness that. They were very conservative Catholics parents, so I was very restricted in what I was able to do growing up, though they thought what the best thing would be is to raise me as a Catholic, and so they wanted my best education and put me in Catholic school. Unfortunately, that Catholic school did everything that Christians shouldn't do, which included being physically and mentally abusive because I was left-handed for one reason. My second grade teacher in particular, she was a nun, and this was back in the 1980s, so surprisingly, this was still going on. He did not believe that left-handed people were good people. They believed that they were the devil children and that there was something mentally wrong with them and that they needed to be changed into being good people, and that is by changing them into being right-handed. So every day I would get hit multiple times by the nuns because I would use my left hand to try to write, either print or do a signature. And that carried really all the way through up to college. I would run into people who would think because I'm different, they would smack me. Even in college, when I didn't even know how to sew, a simple thing that you would think a woman should know how to do, so I didn't know how to do. And the teacher, instead of teaching me in the costume design department how to actually properly design, instead got me in front of the room and literally beat me in front of all of my classmates because I didn't know how to sew, and I was apparently ruining this costume. And I've had even teachers say, sit the F down. It's just, what the heck? So for me, I did not have anybody to go out to. I had to reserve who I was and started drawing and writing because of that.
I really, really, really want to connect that story in a minute, because what you're doing with the Right of Wands series is being able to help us look at something in a two-tone parallel story. You're actually allowing us to live within the character's PTSD journey as it's unfolding, which is a very difficult place. If everyone here in mental health understands, that's a very difficult place to write from and to teach from, right? So if you're working with your patients like myself, Sharon, and Ian, the way that she's writing the story, we can actually watch this character go through this experience and we can feel it. And we're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing these things? Change, and I love that part. And obviously she knows I'm constantly like, why don't they do it this way? Listen, I want to take that then and go have Margie, because of what your specialty is in psychology, Margie, and then working specifically with the adoptive and the foster system. You're dealing with the kids whose parents may have already gone through that trauma and therefore, unfortunately, pass it on, right? And you're also teaching traumatized parents how to work with these children as well. So can you kind of explain to people how you're teaching those parents through the methods you're using?
Yes. So a very powerful quote, Dr. Karen Purvis, who's an expert in the field of children with trauma, says, you cannot lead a child to a place of healing if you do not know the way yourself. And I think as caregivers, so many caregivers get into foster care and adoption, and they just want to love on kids, often don't have a background in trauma. They don't understand trauma. They don't understand trauma responses. So a big part of what we do is just educating on adverse childhood experiences. How does that impact kids in the home? Educating teachers. How does that impact a child in the classroom? And what does that look like? Because PTSD is rampant in these kids. And then as caregivers, we often as well get a secondary PTSD, or even I'm diagnosed primary PTSD from a lot of the things that happened in our house just as a reaction from our children's trauma. And so helping everyone to kind of understand, this is trauma, this is what it looks like. And in a child, PTSD is often underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed. We had a child who we took to the psychiatrist for the first time, and you do all those evaluations beforehand. And the psychiatrist looked at me and she said, this child is off the charts ADHD and oppositional defiant. And she said, I don't believe for a minute that is what this is. She said, this is a lot what PTSD looks like in a child. It looks like attention deficit. It looks like oppositional defiant. And She said, if I'm right, this is what's going to play out over the years. And she nailed it. And it was amazing. But, we started noticing with our kids, a lot of times traditional talk wasn't working for them. They were going to therapy. They were very avoidant. Oftentimes I had a therapist who said, this child climbs the walls. And I thought they were talking like figuratively. No, the child was literally climbing the walls, anything to avoid talking. But we started noticing in our home, popular media, there were things that were happening in our home, just these amazing moments. And Harry Potter being one of the biggest, reading the first book with our kids, preparing to go to Universal so that they knew who all these characters were, because they didn't know Mickey Mouse, they didn't know Harry Potter. We were coming for this big adoption blowout. They didn't know who the characters were. So we're sitting down reading The Sorcerer's Stone, and one of our kids who lots of trauma, multiple moves, started tearing up in the first chapter, and we're like, hey, what's going on? And this is a child who is very dissociative, doesn't know I'm happy, tired, hungry, sad, physical, emotional. There's no connection there to feelings, physical or emotional. And this child said, hey, I know how Harry feels. And we're like, oh, okay, tell us about that. And just kind of this verbal vomit of like all this trauma that had never been reported. And we started processing. And then we started going through chapter by chapter. And the kids said, hey, we want to blog about this. We want to write, what can caregivers ask kids? What can they learn from these characters? How can they, as a family, connect and bond and yet process trauma in this way where you can talk about a character and never have to say, this is how I feel. You can talk about what the character is doing, whether that's effective, ineffective, how that character might feel, why they might feel that way. And just, it kind of exploded from there. We started seeing so much power in connecting with the kids and helping them process their trauma in just a very safe environment through using characters.
So what I'm hearing is we have 4 creators on here. And so we have Mackenzie, we have Kevin, and we have Dustin. And they're all creators who've taken their journeys to be able to help them to process their own PTSD, anxiety, and mental health journey, but just process, because to be able to manifest what we're feeling inside, we bring it outside. So what they're doing then are creative outlets for retraining the brain.
Well, actually, can I add something here? This is what's marvelous, is because exactly what you've said, it's creating a space for both the processing, but what you mentioned, Margie, about the creating the safe spaces. This is the other part that this creative work does, especially when it's informed by somebody that has gone through a trauma, because you're creating spaces for others that you may or may not have had, or that you had to create for yourself. And that this is where the value of pop culture. So I think about the things that Jay and Shatara were talking about in terms of things like proactivity. They can actually give us spaces to talk about mental health. We can use these creative vehicles of whether it's the comic or the movie world or it's the literary world to create spaces that facilitate conversations proactively. I mean, I have to say, like, okay, Jay, I love the fact that you got a Captain America shirt on, because I just sit there and I am going full Isaiah, full Bucky, full Steve, Sam, like, you got me. All of those guys are just, those are my trauma buddies. Like, those are the people that model intergenerational, well, and again, I think of what Sam, did in terms of
some vibranium. Sorry, I had
our Sam on the panel. You are our Sam on the panel, just saying. And so it's that idea. And that's why I really appreciate what Kevin does and what, Mackenzie and Dustin, because you create those safe spaces for those of us on the outside that don't have those talents. I will tell you, like, comics, like, that was long before I knew and was misdiagnosed. So when you talk about misdiagnosis, I was misdiagnosed as bipolar, and it took work subsequent with someone who recognized my childhood PTSD to go, oh, wait a second, you're not bipolar. You're what the interaction of ADHD and PTSD look like if adverse childhood experiences aren't there. So fandoms create those spaces to have conversations and actually clarify diagnosis. So I'm so grateful to the creators for giving us those spaces. And then for those of you that work on the front lines with folks, you know, going through these traumatic processes, because when these things come together, we can create phenomenal places of healing.
And jumping straight from that, man, you guys are amazing. You like read my brain or what? We're going to jump straight here back to Shatara, Jay, and Ian in this moment. Let me ask you, can you not translate these models that we're talking about into the veteran population as well? Is there isn't it possible to be able, I think it is, because I do it with my veteran patients now anyway. I do it literally across the board, but I customize it by my patient age, just so you know. The resiliency program, can we use these type of connections in order to help the PTSD veteran population? So Jay and Shatara, and then Ian.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
You got it, girl.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
In my own, how do I want to answer this question? I feel like the military we need to realize that we may not have all the answers for PTSD. Unfortunately, especially when it comes to people that are creatives, especially when it comes to people of color, especially when it comes to women, we are very closed-minded when it comes to, hey, maybe we can create a graphic department on all ships, and maybe they won't go. So maybe we can have yoga on ships. Maybe we can do these type of things. But the thing is that we have allocated our resources into certain things that are not really helpful to for example, on my floor, and shout out to all the nurses. If you're on here, I love you guys. But we don't have many outlets for it. So you sit at a round table with a bunch of doctors and you tell them your diagnosis. You get diagnosed within 20 minutes and you're like, wow, I have this diagnosis. And then you put them in this floor, but we have nothing for them to cope. We're in acute care. We don't have music therapy. We don't have yoga. We have art therapy where they just paint, which is great. Okay. But it's not stimulating them to the point where they're able to tell their story, because again, this is just another protocol in the military for them. Well, so I believe that we need to connect with people to show us how to do it. You know, like listening to you guys in a panel is like, oh, I never thought about it like that. Maybe we need to incorporate people that have learned. We need veterans to come back and interact with their active duty people. And I understand that sometimes coming back to the military in that way could be triggering, because the military, I'm gonna tell you right now, and everybody can agree, the military will expose your traumas, period. So, but I would like the veteran population to come back to train people like myself to get back with their counterparts and help them with a buddy system, not a buddy system, but more so just bring back your resources so we can know what to do. Because we
almost like you're making me think of peer support.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That right there is exactly the point I was going to dovetail into that, because a lot of assist training, a lot of the MRT training is based on peer support. The military as an organization from branch to branch is ill-equipped to deal with members on a personal level. So what ends up happening, or at least what I've seen happening, and I mean your experiences may be different, but what I've seen happen that really moves the needle as much as it can be moved is that peer support, is developing communities within subcommunities within the military structure and things like that. Like for instance, I come from when I was active duty, I was intel. Now I'm communications, and within those groups, there is a very high number. There's a very large interest in general geekdom, superheroes in particular, superheroes. But I've run into a lot of D&D nerds in the military, and so a lot of that can be absolutely 100%. And so through a lot of us, a lot of what I've seen is service members bonding with each other through the act of role play, which in of itself can be therapeutic, and there's a lot of things that go into that. I've actually the episode of The Sacred Now that's running right now, we talk about that. We talk about how role play, D&D, tabletop gaming, and things like that can, and the various different ways that helps alleviate stress, alleviates PTSD, not looking at it as a cure, but as part of a treatment plan, can give people these like you said, the outlet, but also like the vocabulary for and being able to be in a space where they can deal with these things or approach these themes in a way that may be less triggering. That again, that would be the opposite of what the heavy-handed, the ham-fisted way that the military would deal with it. So I think to get back to it, I think that is the vital piece.
Can I say?
Yeah, no, you go ahead, Kevin. Kevin, I was just going to say one thing real quick, and you say this. I want to bring it back toward me and Ian explaining why our model is exactly what you guys are asking for. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, you're okay. Just to interject on that subject, I just wanted to make it clear that the story that I just shared with you guys, as far as my Marvel military experience and how things ended up for me, well, it totally would have went the opposite direction. And this is being straight up. The judge who insisted that I not be court-martialed and instead given a department to hone my skills, she was Black. She was a Black woman. And the rest of that court, I don't know what you want to call them, and I forget what they call them in the Navy as state attorneys, but the opposition, who was basically trying to not only throw me under the brig, but to give me a bad conduct discharge for life, they were all white. And it was so obvious. They did not want to see my talent breach past what it had already, that stage. They wanted to see it defeated. They would cuss and carry on and downplay and tell me my work was shit. You're no leader. You're never going to make it. This was all I heard. This is what I heard. And he needs to go home. He's with nothing. All kinds of negative stuff.
Those are based on paradigmic relating, right? So it's based on the world that we see through the eyes that we have learned to see it through. And how can we make those shifts possible? Luckily for, blessings that you were able to have someone who could see your world and your vision through your eyes, which is not often the case.
I'll just say this really quick. I believe that had it gone the opposite direction, I probably would have never picked up a pencil again.
Look at that. So
you know what I mean? Because I was 19. I was 19 years old when that happened, and I was like a blank sheet of paper back then. You could tell me anything, I believed it. I was like a yes man, the whole 9 yards, and whatever you told me, I believed.
That's the power of peer support as well, because that was someone that was relating to you as a peer. And that's where the value of peer support comes in from a preventative measure, is that we can get peer support into those places. So you had a peer that saw you as an equal and created an opportunity. And that's what we need more of. And I'm so grateful for the fact that that person was there. But systemically, you should have not had to rely on the individual experience and the peer status of the person sitting in that. And so that's where systemic change needs to happen. And where peer support can help transform.
Which is where something like this, like diversely could come into handy.
Yeah, go ahead, Ian. You were saying, because I wanted to explain the model.
Which is where something like Diversely Geek can come in handy. If they don't have something specifically set up in the military, if you have access to the internet, you can always sign on and talk to friends who you meet through Diversely Geek and develop that fandom. You can have Self-Care Saturday. You can have D&D games online even. Just something to have that peer support as well as that self-care regimen all mixed in one.
And just to remember, we are creating, this is part of our services. Our mentorship program is actively to have people sign on to go through these spectrums through our mentorship and our counselorship programs. That's physically what the new foundation is for. And that is why we're having all of you on here, is because we knew that this spectrum, that there was a global approach to it, and that there was no dissecting any one community from another, because we are all part of one world. Why can't we help each other in the same way? We all need the same love. We need the same fellowship. We need the same acceptance, for goodness sakes. We all love music. Maybe a different language, but we love it. We all love comic books. Sure, it's a different language, but we love it. We all love sci-fi, fantasy, and D&D and role-playing. Hello, people. We love art. What makes us different? Nothing but language and location. So why can't we all treat all of these people in the same way through peer support and through the program? So that's our perspective. So yay, this is me. I want to roll back in real quick, Dustin, and to a question about your decision to, and I know we talked through it with you on our last discussion, how we thought that the whole journey to creating Listener was a highly cathartic experience. So with Dustin and Kevin and Mackenzie, do you feel that your art is cathartic for your own self-care and your own mental wellness?
It's an incredible thing, right? Everybody here, like you said, has mentioned certain aspects of everything that we try to empower in our book. You know what I mean? It's a very cathartic, because of the fact that you get people, like when we put out our first issue, we had no clue that anybody would vibe with it at all, right? We put it out because my heart hurt. You know what I mean? Like physically, mentally, I was in a lot of pain at that point. And we put the book out because I didn't want anyone to forget what my uncle had done or what he had accomplished for our community. In the same way that I wouldn't want anyone to forget any of the stories we were just talking about. They need to be remembered, and when people come out and they go, yeah, I never stood up for, my family or my people or my thought processes, it brought credence to what we've done. Right. Writing the Listener helped me, and talking to you guys has helped me so much more, because it's like, I still have that imposter syndrome in my life that I've created for myself, and it's very painful, and it'll bring you to tears when beautiful people like you guys come out and you're like, hey, look, this is what we've done. This is what we've accomplished. I get goosebumps just listening and thinking about the Listener, because of the fact that it's all of us. The Listener is so much more than the small pieces of it, and I'm grateful to have had family and come from a people that is so proud that we can tell our stories, and people are beginning to listen.
I'm listening. I just got on board and I'm listening. And you see how much I've connected and you shared everything to me. So thank you so much. And for trusting us with your work, okay? Thank you so much.
And Dustin, you just made me realize I'm actually part of another fandom, and I think we all are. The fandom of helping people. Like, this is why we're a little family here. We're a fandom of helping people.
Absolutely. I'll wrap it up real quick.
Cathartic nerds.
Yeah, exactly.
Cathartic nerds.
That sounds like a really good comic book. Like, we're all superheroes.
Oh my God, we got the team. We have the team right here, people. Let's write this thing. Oh my God. Okay, it's done. It's happening. If anybody knows me, you know it's going to happen. Right? So, how about you, Mackenzie?
Yes, definitely writing was my way of escaping from the reality and going through my own personal experience. Creating the character of Mirta has been extremely, how would you say it, it's allowed me to shed a part of myself and be able to share that part of myself through this character that is not perfect. He's not perfect. He's not, while he's the protagonist of the series, he does some bad things. I mean, it's just, that's the way he is. And it helps to be able to know you're not alone. You don't have to be perfect, and there is an outlet. You can reach out to somebody. I created him for the whole aspect that you matter. You're not alone, and there are people that you can talk to. Any of us on this panel, you can reach out to us about your story and tell us what it is that you're struggling with, and we can help you.
We can, and we will. That is why we created this platform. And for you, Kevin, is your, I don't know, for me, your art is cathartic. I've already explained to you how I feel about it when I see it, but for you as the creator.
Well, how I see it. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because I was asking if the artwork on your creative platform, it can be cathartic.
Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to Diversely Geeks, and welcome to
Yeah.
Who just started playing me? That was so funny. Okay, guys, go ahead.
I would say the same. You know, my a little bit of my negative experience in the Navy with you know, being told that I would never make it, or you know, that my artwork was nothing. It was based on, because it was that was all based on jealousy, envy, and fear. Okay. But I think it did get to me for a little while, and same thing. It was like my escape to get better. And I honed in even harder to get better. And that was my safe place, but it was also my determination place to beat those naysayers, so to speak. Mm-hmm. That's all. That's pretty much how I get around about it. You know, I just felt like I wasn't going to give up, and I wasn't going to have someone tell me, you know, that I couldn't do it.
Absolutely amazing. And then I'm going to end with Transfiguring Adoption. I'm going to plug. We have like 2 minutes to plug people. We got to run. Transfiguring Adoption. Tell me some last words for parents and people across the age of how they can connect to their fandoms and be able to really support their healing.
Check out transfiguringadoption.com. We are constantly reviewing media. We have discussion guides that we create to help people to kind of work through some of those things. What are some questions you can talk about? But there's so much power in pop culture to, like I said, connect with a character, to process your trauma, to walk through, and for understanding each other. You can see, caregivers can look at other caregivers and go, okay, what are they doing? Did that work? Did that not work? The kids can look at the other kids. There's just so much power in that.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what age you are. Not in the least, guys. Not in the least. All right, my love. So we're going to do some lovely plugs real quickly. And we're going to start with Jay, if that's okay. Tell us how to find you.
Yes, sacrednowpod.com. The podcast is called The Sacred Now. We're on Twitter and Facebook. The podcast deals with a lot of heady themes, religion, philosophy. Mental health is a big one that we've been doing a lot of episodes on here lately. We look at these big themes through the lens of pop culture. You know, things like Captain America and toxic masculinity, and Superman as a messiah figure. These sorts of discussions. Again, sacrednowpod.com. Hope you all check it out. Thank you so much for having me here.
And Dustin?
You can find me on Facebook. I'm super easy. I don't do a lot of social media like I probably should be doing, but I'm on it all the time, and I'm always on to speak to people. That if anybody needs anybody to talk to, I'm readily available. Also, if you go to www.thelistener.xyz, you can pick up issues. And if you go to Kickstarter, my books are on there every month. So you just have to look up The Listener on Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And, it's readily available for anybody that's interested.
And Mackenzie?
You can find me at mackenziefloor.com, as well as at any type of your favorite retail store, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And Kevin, what do we have going on?
My website with Art Brand Studios and WB, you can find it on Art of Entertainment / Kevin Wood. Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is One Mighty Micron. That's the number one, not spelled out one.
Got it. It's the one. Thank you. All right,
yeah.
And Ms. Shatara?
You can find my organization, Women of Color Mental Health Alliance, at www.wocmha.org, or you could type in WOCMHA in Facebook, and you'll see everything that we're doing. Again, we have something for everybody. It's just our goal is to just break the stigmas in the people of color community. And if you want to follow me personally, type in Shatara in Instagram, and I'll probably be the first person you call. And by the way, I want to tell you, I was named after Cheetara from Thundercats.
Oh, that's cool, because I was about to ask that. I was going to ask that, and
Yes.
that's what you're going to love is that I just got licensed to do some nostalgia art for Thundercats.
Okay. Amazing. All right, my loves, we're ready to head out, and Yami's going to play us out with a video. Thank you, everyone, so much for being on today, and I so appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation, everyone. See everyone, hopefully next panel, too. Okay, bye, everybody.
Hi, my name is Molly Marcus, and I'm part of the Diversely Geek team. And there's a couple of questions I'm going to answer today. First question is there a specific character, a historic figure, story, or piece, song, literary piece, or something else that's empowered me to participate and innovate, create, and call to action my own wellness? And that answer for me is always the Fourth Doctor in Doctor Who. Doctor Who, for me, was pivotal for my imagination, for everything else. And what made him really special to me was that he wasn't necessarily earthbound all the time. He was a lot less earthbound than the other doctors up to that point. And this allowed for special effects. It allowed for broadcasting in color and having these amazing adventures all over the universe. And to me, that was super inspiring. I would escape into these and picture myself as his companion instead of Sarah Jane, although I was very inspired by Sarah Jane and her curiosity. From the sonic screwdriver to K9, scolding evildoers, my imagination would just run wild. My young scientific mind enthralled with his activities. And as I got older, I really felt that this doctor opened up the world for me, especially in curiosity and discovery. And the other question I'm going to answer is, what is one of my favorite fandom quotes that act as a source of balance and hope? Hands down, it's going to be Star Wars, the whole Star Wars fandom. I have two quotes that remind me of balance and hope. So the first one is Leia, and it is when she says to Rey, "Never be afraid of who you are." And this is when Rey was becoming concerned about her bloodline, and Leia delivered this timeless wisdom. To me, to always be your authentic self is critical to not only your well-being, but who you are as a person. So never, ever fear. Never, ever not live authentically. Always be yourself. So that's one. The second quote is between Rose and, actually it's the ethos behind Rose Tico's closing words in The Last Jedi. And she says, "That's how we're going to win. Not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love." And while not fighting what you hate and instead saving what you love is the worst way to win a war, it's still keeping with the hopeful ideology of the Star Wars fandom and franchise. You do have to fight what you hate, because it's literally what war is, or what we do in the LGBTQ community, or always struggling, or in Black Lives Matter. We always have to fight hate. But at the same time, we have to save what we love too. So we don't want the bad guys, to get everything, right? So those are my two things. Molly Marcus, signing off.